Hello, Lisa here. Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to Tarot by the Book. Tarot by the Book is a weekly series where I share with you a 3-card week ahead spread that you can use to apply. It's like an intuitive week ahead reading that you can use to consider how your week ahead is going to go. You can also apply the 3-card reading to any situation that's going on in your life. But what makes it Tarot by the Book is that I also, after I've given my intuitive reading, I also like to share with you the guidebook meanings for the cards that we've drawn so that you get more than just my intuitive read. You also get extra information from the deck creator and you get a feel for how the deck actually works out in a reading. Because I think and I say this a lot in this series, but I don't think it can be said enough. We see a lot of unboxings and walkthroughs, and I love filming unboxings and walkthroughs on my channel, but we don't always get to see how a deck works in real time. And so that's one of the goals for this series. The other goal is it gives me a chance to tell you a little bit about my thoughts on working with a deck, how I've enjoyed using it, and more of my cohesive thoughts after I personally have worked with it for a little while. I always choose the deck for this series randomly, so I was pretty curious to see how today is going to play out because the Herbcrafter's Tarot is a deck that I have not spent a lot of time getting to know, and yet it is my favorite herb or botanical based tarot deck that I've ever held in my hands. I really would like to get to know this deck better, and I'm actually hoping that today's reading will give me an opportunity to maybe get past any blocks I have about working with this deck, because I think it's really well executed, and I've recently watched some videos by other people in the community who really love this deck, such as Sarah over at Sunset Bow Tarot, who has done a remarkably wonderful detailed walkthrough on this deck, which if I remember I will link that video in the cards or down in the description box below for you. And I've also seen Avery talking about this channel as well, Avery Fawcett, and I will link their channel as well if I can remember. I will do my best to remember to link those videos that I'm referring to. Avery's actually talked about this deck several times on their channel, and Sarah at Sunset Bow has also talked about this deck several times recently especially. But their excitement about the deck has definitely brought this one back to the forefront, and so I was really excited when it came up in my random draw. I was like, yes, I get to try this out and see how it's going to work. I'm actually really nervous about how this may work out intuitively because I'm not super well versed in all the plants, but I think that between what little tidbits I can get intuitively, possibly more, who knows, and what the guidebook has to say, we'll sort of experience this deck for the first time kind of together. So that's how this is going to go. If you are here for the intuitive read, this is the time where I will invite you to take a couple deep breaths, settle into your seat, and focus on either your week ahead or the issue at hand that you would like the reading to be about, so that as I share with you my thoughts, the reading, the guidebook messages, you can apply those to that situation. I always work with 3 card positions for this series. So the first position is the energy. So the energy of the week ahead is how I'll be reading it. The obstacle is the second position, so we typically look at that card in its shadowy position, and it's like as if it was drawn reversed. And the third card position is advice, so it'll be our advice for the week. Again, you can apply these messages to a situation as well. So I'm going to give it a couple more shuffles while I'm focusing, and then we'll draw our 3 cards and see how we do. One more. So the energy, we have the Madre of Fire. I think that is essentially like the queen. I may have to double check that. We have the Adelita of Air, Oregano. And for our advice, we have the 3 of Air, Echinacea. Oh boy, this one's really going to challenge me because I'm not as familiar, especially with the quartz. So let's look at this and we'll see how I do. I'm going to zoom us in and we'll take a better look at the cards. So our energy for the week is time, Madre of Fire. And we have our herbalist here, our Herbcrafter is, there's a couple books here, Potions and Brews, and the thyme is being ground up in a mortar and pestle. My understanding of the herbs that are in the fire suit is that they tend to be ones that catalyze change, that catalyze, that we use in alchemical workings. And I'm getting most of this from memory and from what I've seen on Sarah at Sunset Bow's channel, so bear with me. I don't know a whole lot about thyme, but I do know that the Queen of Wands, or the Queen of the fire suit, assuming that this is lining up with the Queen, is somebody with lots of confidence and drive and determination. Wow, we're going to be relying, I think, a little bit on the book for this one. I'm coming up a little bit blank, but let me just think for a moment. I will say that there's definitely an energy of taking one's life into one's own hands. So not necessarily just sitting back and letting things happen, but rather being a part, playing an active role in your life, and actually creating the change you want to see is some of the wording that just popped into my head there. I'll be really curious to learn more about thyme and see how that plays in when we get into the book. So the energy of the week, I would say, is definitely don't sit on your laurels and wait for life to happen to you, but rather take an active role, like be a participant in your life this week, right? That's the energy of the week. It's not going to be an energy of stagnation, but rather one of movement and of drive forward. Let's take a look at our obstacle. Oregano, and we have the Adalita of air. Oregano. Just trying to take in the image and see what comes to mind. I get the feeling like this Herbcrafter here is collecting herbs to bring into like a kitchen or into a meal, like just harvesting from the garden to prepare. There are so many birds outside and it's actually delightful. I'm kind of loving it. I hope it's not too distracting. I think we're going to rely on the guidebook for this one, because I don't know enough about what this card is meant to represent, or enough about the herb. So I'm a little bit stuck. So our obstacle, we'll have to take a look together in the guidebook. Let's see what the Three of Air, Echinacea. Echinacea. Now I know echinacea is a immune boosting herb, and it's kind of funny. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to get much just looking at these plants, and I'm really not. I have a feeling this is one of those decks that I would probably work with almost exclusively with the guidebook until I knew the plants very, very well, or until I'd worked with the deck long enough for their stories to be really embedded. So I think in this case, just to do the reading service, we're going to go right into the guidebook, and then based on what the guidebook says, I'm going to weigh in with my thoughts, and we'll see how we get as far as into our reading. And this is part of the reason why I like doing this series, because there are decks in my collection that I work with exactly this way, where I rely a lot more on the guidebook and less so on intuition, particularly when we're talking about things like herbs, where I know there's so much to say about thyme and I just don't know enough. So let's take a look and see the Madre of Fire in thyme. So let's find fire. Okay, so it looks like the Adalitas are the warriors of the suit. So that would have been, I guess, like the knight. That's that one there. But we're on the Madre. So let me get to the Madre of Fire. Oh, I see. So they're grouped by... I see. They're grouped by category, like numerologically. So let's take a look at this card together. We'll see what the guidebook says, and then we'll see what kind of messaging we take away from this. Turn up the heat on your creative passions. A warm heart and a spicy kitchen table welcome others to your table. Stoke the creative fire that burns in your belly. Ooh, I love that. And we have this little oven fire over here to the side, and we get this idea of, again, definitely putting intention into the work. So I did pick up on that. A woman stands in a warm kitchen. The table is covered in bottles, books, and a large fresh harvest of thyme. A kettle whistles on the stove. Yellow and orange herbs dangle from the rafters. She is dressed in garden clothes, and her worn hands calmly grind herbs in a large molcajete. It looks like a mortar and pestle to me. I'm guessing that a molcajete, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Please, somebody who knows how, let me know if I'm too far off. That would be amazing. Thank you. The Madre of Fire inspires others by living an artistic life. She teaches from her actions. She encourages collaboration, inviting everyone to play in her busy apothecary. She is upbeat and accepts life's paradoxes. She knows thyme is both a popular kitchen herb and a superb medicine plant. She is driven by a rich imagination and finds magic in everything. Creativity is second nature to her, and her days are filled with inspired activities. Just like remedies made with thyme, she is warm and wholehearted. She attracts people into her home. She radiates vitality and love. Embrace your inner glow. It warms the hearts of others. Crafting with the Madre of Fire. Add flavor to your medicine cabinet. Craft thyme salt and syrup. Invite friends for a busy day of making thyme potions like vinegar, honey, and tincture. Show someone you love them by cooking them a meal. Add thyme to your dish. So the only thing here that I'm a little disappointed about is that I don't feel like I learned a lot about thyme. I did learn that it's a popular kitchen herb and a superb medicine plant, but I'm not fully seeing how thyme specifically, I see, just like remedies made with thyme, she is warm and wholehearted. Interesting. So she is very much the Queen of Wands energy, and she's very much about working with others, getting people inspired, getting people mobilized to do things. So this week, our energy of the week, really think about how you can mobilize yourself, mobilize others, and make progress. So really feed that creative fire or feed that project that you've been working on. Let's take a look at the one that really got me stuck, the Adelita of Air. Oops. So this is the Warrior card, which means this is going to be like the Knight of Air or like the Knight of Swords. So let's take a look and see what the card had to say. Of Air, oregano. So the message says, speak from between your legs, shout, sing, and scream. Declare your truth loudly and without fear. A young woman gathers herbs for bajos, warm vaginal steam baths. She selects the most vibrant and strong plants to use in the ritual: roses, calendula, and oregano. So I was wrong. She was not gathering herbs for cooking, but for personal care. Very interesting. The Herbcrafter arranges her steaming chair. I was wondering what that was. Okay, so I was totally having a moment and I was like, what do I say on camera about this? But I was like, this looks like a chair with a hole in it and a bowl beneath. And I'm like, that's not like a toilet. So what is that? I had no idea what that was, but that makes sense now. So she is actually taking care of her yoni, basically. The Adelita of Air is a champion for truth. She vows to remove the shame around women's bodies, beginning by loving her own. Aww. She strengthens the seat of her voice with vaginal steams. She knows oregano is more than just a kitchen herb. It is also an ally for women, easing menstrual pain and menopausal symptoms, bringing on menses and increasing warmth and circulation to the pelvic region. Okay, I'm kind of loving. I feel like I'm learning a little bit more about oregano here. A little more than I learned about thyme, actually, in the previous card. She understands that what ancient women knew about the connection between the vagina and the throat. When one is constricted, so is the other. She sings during birth and screams during sex. She allows throat and vagina to open in order to express herself fully. She is blunt and clear. As Clarissa Pinkola Estes, author of Women Who Run with Wolves, states, she speaks from between her legs. That's pretty cool because I'm actually reading Women Who Run with the Wolves right now. Crafting with the Adelita of Air. Use vaginal steams to improve circulation and energy flow in the pelvis and womb. Practice activities such as harvesting herbs in a squat position to open your pelvis. And when you cook with oregano, don't forget to sing. Okay, so that was a very potent message. Interestingly, I think that since it came up for us in the obstacle position and it talks about really speaking from that deep place inside of you, I think that what it's really saying is that as an obstacle, we need to be aware that this is not the week to give in to that feeling of needing to be silent. This is actually a week to use our voice. The obstacle that's going to come up is that we're going to feel constricted in this area, right? We're going to feel like we can't necessarily speak our truth. We may feel like we need to hold back or that we're restricted in that way. We may feel a little bit stuck. The words may feel a little bit stuck, and it's going to be important to soften and to allow and to open. I think that's really, really interesting. All right, let's take a look finally at our advice card for the week, which is Echinacea, the 3 of Air. There is some numerological associations throughout this deck that, again, I think Sarah at Sunset Bow does a beautiful job of explaining, but I'm going to quickly reference it just so we're on, so we can I can be reminded, and then I can share it with you. So 3s are flourishing, abundance, and harmony. So the 3 cards feature plants that are easy to grow. These are the first plants the Herbcrafter attempts to cultivate in her garden. They reward her with a bumper crop from little effort. They are beginner herbs and beneficial to pollinators. These plants invite her to create freely. Nothing holds her back. The success of growing her first herbs is a milestone for the Herbcrafter. She feels a sense of confidence and productivity, learns the old healing ways while giving back to all the beings that rely on the land. The herbs of the 3s grow the awareness sparked in the aces and meet the challenge encountered in the 2s. Tending, harvesting, and creating with these herbs inspires a lifetime journey. In the 3s, the Herbcrafter awakens to the pleasure of plants. Okay, so let's take a look at the, 3 of Air is already on this page. That works out well, so let's just move the artwork over here. So, keywords, or sorry, the message at the top here is, speak the truth about your heartbreak. Be the medicine that heals the pierced heart. Healing from grief takes time. Oh, time is in, clock time, not the herb time, although I do think it's interesting that the herb time was in our reading. 3 echinacea flowers pierce the sky on a cloudy summer day. As an abandoned barn with a rusted roof stands in the background. The sun and rain battle for position. Bursts of light are followed by short showers. Tattered petals of pink flowers fall as the plant bends towards the ground to offer its seeds. New buds emerge from beneath the thick green layers of leaves. Heartache leads to self-knowledge. You may be confronted with an agonizing reality. Wild echinacea, a potent medicinal that blanketed the prairies of North America, is now endangered. We may never again experience wild, abundant fields of this electrifying pink flower. See things as they truly are and accept the loss. Healing lies in your ability to learn from the devastation. Echinacea remedies increase resistance to infection and build a strong body. Embracing painful truths leads to resilience. Seek out strong allies who will help you through the grieving process. Find comfort in your sorrow. Echinacea is a slow-growing plant. Sit with your grief as long as it takes. Crafting with the 3 of Air. Find expression for your heartbreak. Write your story. Buy only cultivated echinacea. When you heal the earth, you heal us all. Embark on a meditative journey to the prairies where echinacea once flourished and harvest medicine for your grief there. This is really, really interesting, especially because in the first card, we see this idea of sort of mobilizing and pulling in, activating, and being really moving in a direction, right? Really working towards something. In our obstacle card, we encounter this idea of restriction, of not being able to speak from that place between the legs, of not being able to speak our authentic truth. And yet our advice card for the week is very much about telling your story, allowing your truth and your emotion and your experience to be felt and held and witnessed and to make space for that. So I think that for a lot of us, we're going to be feeling sort of some intense things this week. And I think through that process of feeling that intensity, we're going to be moving from a place of feeling sort of constricted to really, if we take the advice of this card, really breaking loose and perhaps gaining even more momentum in the direction of our goals. So that, my friends, is our week ahead reading with the Herbcrafter's Tarot. This is a deck by Joanna Powell Gilbert, and the guidebook is written by Letitia Guthrie. This is actually a really, really interesting deck, and I definitely feel like this is one of those decks that I need to sit with and spend a fair amount of time with before it'll be one that I can just pull out and read with intuitively, as we saw today. And I think this is a good reminder that no matter how well you think you know the tarot, there will be decks, there will be experiences you have where you get stumped and you're like, I don't know what this is trying to tell me. And this happens most of all for me with decks like this that use symbols that I'm just not as familiar with. And in this case, because we're relying on herbs as the primary symbol of the deck, without the knowledge of herbs really like seated in my head, I'm not going to be able to necessarily go off the cuff the way I can with other decks. And I think decks like this are really great for your personal growth in your reading practice, because they challenge you and they teach you something new, and they may help you to make new associations. I'm hoping to have some dedicated time to work with this deck in the not too distant future. Perhaps I may even spend a month with the deck rather than just a week and really see if I can build that bond with it and get to know these herbs and plants a little bit better, perhaps do some crafting with them. I have worked with this deck for a week in the past, and so you may be able to find my weekly deck review where I talk about that on the channel here if you're interested on what my first thoughts were. But this is a deck that I feel is really important to have and use in my collection. I just am still trying to figure out exactly where it fits in. But in general, I really enjoy it. I think it's got a lot of wisdom to share, and I'm really excited that it's a part of my collection. I'm just gonna say collection again. I was looking for another word, it wasn't happening. Thank you so much for joining me for this week's Tarot by the Book. I hope that this reading was helpful for you in some way, and I hope that you got a better look at this beautiful, beautiful deck. This is a mass market deck. I will have a link to it down below. I believe it's still currently readily available. So check that out if you are interested. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if you would like to book a personal reading with me, you can do that over at supportivetarot.com. Thanks so much. Bye.